Welcome to Social Media Mayhem, your digital shield. My name is Robert Mikas. I will be serving as your moderator for this session. You'll be hearing a presentation from Joe Adams on this very timely subject. But before we get started, I want to take a few minutes of your time. First, the GFOA board has colored ribbons on their name tags. Please feel free to ask these individuals any questions you may have about the association or the conference. We have several breakout sessions scheduled over the next couple of days. The rooms are listed in the agenda. Surveys are available online, and we'll provide a few minutes at the end of each session for you to log on and complete the survey. Please let us know what you are dissatisfied with and what portions of the conference you are happy with. Most classes are being taped, and the video will be available shortly after the conference on the GFOA website for its members. Lastly, phones should be on mute or turned off. Now we'll move along to our session. Joe Adams is the Director of IT at the Anxiety and Agoraphobia Treatment Center in Pennsylvania. He is also a continuing education instructor at Bucks County Community College and CE Union of New Jersey. He is an expert in Microsoft Windows, C#, and most modern front-facing web technologies. He also has audit compliance dealing with PCI, NCUA, and HIPAA. Now please welcome Joe Adams.
Good morning. Thank you. So just as we get started, the previous speaker, where was he? I think he's wandered off already. Good for him. I did get the memo. It wasn't necessarily by choosing, though. The reason I wear the hat is because I got the memo probably 6 years ago or so. I'm Joe Adams. Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. I don't usually get one, and I'm here today on behalf of CE Union to speak to you all about a very interesting topic, and that topic would be social media. So this is just a quick introduction, which I've already had about myself. That's great. So how do you give an ethics talk about social media? It's a technology topic. It's a topic that doesn't really lean towards ethics. Usually when we do an ethics seminar, it's about something to do with the local finance board ethics rules, or it's about the state ethics commission, or it's about a situation with an elected official. But today, we're here to talk about the implications of social media. So let's all see if we can go ahead and tell a short little story and see how many of you relate to it. Does anyone know who this gentleman is? Has anyone ever seen him before? A couple of you, maybe a few of you. This is Dave Nino. He's the owner and operator of CE Union, and I purposely look for pictures that he would not want me to show when he's not here, so there might be a few of those during today's presentation. Dave worked for the government pretty much his whole life. He started CE Union. Since 1991, he worked for the local finance board. He was an ethics investigator up until his retirement in 2010, but he started his career I don't want to say what year he started his career because he's asked me not to, but he started it quite a while ago. And here's a photo of Dave on assignment pretending to know what to do in the city of Camden. The state sent him down there to assist with something in which he was in no way qualified for. During this era was when Dave told me he learned how to bluff. That was one thing we definitely learned about him that was quite interesting. Let's see how many of you can relate to the following story. When Dave started his job, there were maybe fancy typewriters. There were rumors of electric typewriters, but there weren't that many personal computers. Probably a lot of you in the room can either relate to this or have heard of a time for this. Around the 80s, Commodore 64 was kind of a thing, but it was super expensive still. You didn't really have one. Everyone didn't. It wasn't common like you'd see computers today. Cell phones worked. In the early 90s, you actually had a cell phone. When you were angry at someone, you could throw it against the wall, and all that would happen with the little battery would pop out of the back, and you could just put it back in. And by the way, you could charge that on a Sunday and still be using it on a Thursday. I paid how much money for this, and I can get it to last a day. So there were some nice things about phones back in the 90s. The internet looked something like this in the early days. Internet Explorer around the Windows 95 era was when we started to see that. You may have been familiar with Netscape and a few other browsers back in the day. This was back when if you wanted to use the internet, you had to let the other people in the house or on the phone line know. Because if you were going to go on the internet, no one could use the phone. And if you were younger and, let's say, lived with your mother, and your mother liked to, let's say, go on the phone, you didn't get much access to internet. Cell phones in the early 2000s started to advance a little bit. You started to see the flip screens, and Android was kind of a thing, but they didn't really work that well, and data was still expensive, and this was still back in the time when if you wanted to text someone, you had to make sure they weren't out of text messages yet, because else they'd get a fee, and you didn't want to be responsible for that. Internet cost more than your mortgage did to actually use what you would use today. They were kind of gimmicky, but they were starting to work. Early 2000s, we finally started seeing true laptops permeating the workplace. Yes, they had super expensive ones prior to that, but this is where the age of the laptop really began to take off. The mobile computer, as they would call it, the mobile workforce. There used to be this thing called MySpace from 2005 to 2008. Anyone in the room had a MySpace? We've got a couple brave hands. I'm very proud of all of you. So I'll give out gold stars to those hands. 3 gold stars, I'll let you leave. So MySpace was pretty popular. Everyone had this friend called Tom, and all you got to do on MySpace was what? Does anyone really remember what MySpace was? You raised your hand. You had one, didn't you? Do you remember what MySpace was about? No. I'm not really sure either. I think you could upload a photo, and maybe there was some messages sent back and forth, but something really interesting happened with MySpace, for those of you that didn't have it. When you had a MySpace, you could send messages to your friends. Do you remember this? And an interesting feature was built into that. When your friend sent you a message, if you didn't read it, they could tell. And when you read it, they could tell. So you'd get a friend messaging you. You'd see the message in your inbox. You decided, I have a life. I have other things to do right now. I'm not going to check it. You'd come to see them 24 hours later, and you'd immediately get, why haven't you checked my message? Why haven't you read it? Because, see, look, I'm going to log into my Facebook and show you that you haven't looked at my message yet. Do any of us have technology like that today? This is the first real instance of it, of when your friends could nag you because you hadn't looked at their messages yet. Around the 2005 era, you started seeing regularly around the workforce, Motorola's with the flip phones, the Razr phones. I think this is when Sprint had those, or Nokia had those touch-to-talk phones where they were like walkie-talkies. You'd be in the middle of the meeting and someone would buzz in and say, beep, hey Frank. And it would just be so obnoxious, but you wouldn't want to tell the guy to turn that off or put it away because he'd made that life decision. eBay, that's what it looked like up on the left. Google in the middle was for checking that the internet worked and seeing what other parts of the internet worked. Amazon just sold books. Can you imagine that? And that's what MySpace looked like up in the top right-hand corner there, and that was everybody's friend Tom. That's what the internet was. Dave was still working for the government at this time, and he was still working for the government around this era. Does everyone remember this? A guy in California stood on a stage that was very, very fancy, and he got up in a black turtleneck and some stonewashed jeans and a pair of sneakers, and he said, see this? This costs $700 to $800, and you're going to buy a new one every year. And he was right. He really was right. And then other companies got wise and said, oh, we're going to make our versions for $700 to $800, and then when you walk out of the house without it, you're going to get anxiety. And they were right. I got to owe it to them. You see someone make a good decision, and you're just like, man, I wish I was there. And now, of course, we live in this, the age of constantly connected devices. There's an app for that. Used to be a phrase a while ago. I stopped talking to people who say that phrase, but that phrase was popular. There's an app for that. And now there is. Anything you want to do. If you want to bank, if you want to file taxes, if you want to sign up for a mortgage, if you'd like to check your credit, anything you'd want to do, there's an app for. And we live in a digitally connected world. And Dave started to notice things, along with myself, that have started to happen in society. How many of you have recently gone to a dinner like this? So I'm not the only one. You take people, and this is what, and I'm sorry, I'm going to get a little personal here. This is what bothers me, especially when I know I'm paying for the dinner, And I'm paying for their, I hate to say it, I'm paying for their time, and I'd ask them to come talk to me, and then immediately the phone comes out, and it's like, oh, by the way, whatever notifications I'm getting are way more important than you right now. Oh, thanks. I'm not taking you to dinner again. But this is what happens. I go to dinner now, and I'll see people my age and younger, and people older than myself, all sitting staring at their phones, not looking at each other, not communicating, but someone will send a message and then the other people will laugh as if they all just got it. Is this what we've devolved to as a human species now? Hold on, I want to talk to you. Let me send it in 140 characters or less. It's hysterical. It seems so. You go to an event, like a kid's school concert, and everyone's kid's up on the front of the stage, and there's that guy in front of you who doesn't know what the device is, but his spouse just got him an iPad for Christmas, and it's the only thing he has with a camera on it, so he's holding up this 10-inch iPad. You're sitting right behind him. You want to stand up, and everybody's on their phone. But what does this remind us of? Everybody's now got a camera and a microphone, and everyone wants to experience life through a 4.7 to 5.5 inch OLED or LCD screen. And that's what we're starting to experience. This one actually frustrates me. I was recently put under a new administration in April, the 22nd. Yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, I know. So, I do seminars for a living. I'm a public speaker. I'm an educator. Like, this is what I enjoy doing. I'm one of those weird people that loves public speaking. And I was at a seminar back in March, just before I was about to receive new management. And it was a Department of Public Works conference. Did anyone see me at a DPW conference? Because then this story would be kind of useless. Anyway, I was there. And the room was filled with maybe 300 men, specifically men. It was gender specific. Most of them were named Mike and Bob. It was the DPW. They're all very lovely people, but there was maybe 3 ladies in the entire room. Now, when I announced I was about to get married, from the back of the room, a steady no began to brew. And for the rest of the day, I lie to you not, I'm just testifying what happened. Every lady who walked up to me said, oh, congratulations, you're gonna love it. Every guy who walked up to me said, don't do it, congratulations, you're gonna love it. Just like that, without fail. They still bring me back to speak for them. It's hysterical. But this happens to me. I'll be in bed. I'll be getting ready to lay down. And a bright light, as if someone turned a light on in the room, will pop up. And then suddenly I won't be able to sleep. Because, as my wife puts it, she has to check Facebook, Instagram, and the weather to know what to wear tomorrow. So I don't really get to sleep that much. But these we can kind of all accept. I can kind of accept the fact that people don't know how to talk to each other anymore, because as a public speaker, that means more work for me. I can kind of accept the fact that everyone's got a device and a digital camera, and they always want to take pictures of things, because those things always break, and that means more work for me. I don't really have much to say about this because I'm out of control, so that I can't say much. This just happens, and I'm going to have to put up with it. But this one drives me nuts. See, we all get that one. The other day, I was on the road, and I pulled up next to a kid who was on his phone, and I rolled my window down, and I just began to berate him at a traffic light. And it's as if he didn't know there were other humans around. He was very taken aback. He didn't know what to do. He put his phone down immediately, and then it turned green, so I sped off, and I swear to you not, the car just sat there for 15 seconds. He wasn't aware that other humans could communicate to him while on the road outside of that little device. And of course, he was wearing a beard and hipster glasses. That just makes it easier. So we've grown into this world. Technology has rapidly advanced. It's made our lives better. I mean, realistically, it has. You know, if on my way here, I drove from Philadelphia this morning. If on my way here I got in an accident, there's 3 different ways I could have contacted emergency services. The new iPhone just has a feature where you click it a couple times and it goes into like this emergency mode. And if you wait a few seconds, it'll call the police for you. So you don't even have to bother with that. So that's great. I love that. If I'm found unconscious on the side of the road, there's an emergency feature that paramedics can find and grab my medical ID. Right there. It's got my allergies, everything I'm allergic to. So if I hit the emergency button and I pass out, not only will an ambulance show up, but the paramedics will be able to figure out what they need to know about me to get me to the hospital. That's a beautiful thing I don't want to get rid of. But what are some of the trade-offs? That's what I'd like to talk about today. And I'd like to talk about today ways that we should use technology when it comes to social media especially, and maybe some ways that we shouldn't. So when Dave Nino was at the State, how many of you think he received mandatory computer training? Let me ask another question, and I'd like you to look around the room. How many of you as government employees have ever received mandatory technology training that wasn't for a new vendor product? Anyone here get mandatory Windows training? Look around the room. I saw maybe one or two hands. In private sector, I get called in to do this regularly. Computer training is part of their thing, but in the government, I haven't seen that as much. There's two reasons I get called in to do training when it comes to computers in the government. To satisfy a joint insurance checklist, because they have to have some form of cybersecurity training or some type of generic baseline computer training, so when they get a cyber attack, which by the way, technology people don't use the word cyber. News anchors use the word cyber. So when their security gets compromised and their data gets leaked, they want to be able to cash that check in from the insurance. So they need some form of cybersecurity training. And the other reason is continuing education, getting the title credits. That's why we're mostly called in. And the interesting thing that I've noticed is that it's not just this room full of people that have never received mandatory training. It's not just Dave Nino who never sat down and received mandatory training. It's everywhere. I've gotten called in and I've been sat down and told about police officers using their phones to Snapchat with minors from the car while in uniform. Some of the biggest offenders are like my wife. My wife's a school teacher, and they are some of the worst offenders when it comes to social media. They'll add their friends, they'll communicate with them, they'll send messages, they'll send pictures back and forth. My personal favorite, though, it's between two, and I'll give you those two. We've caught firefighters live streaming the ride on the truck to the site on social media. So imagine that. Your house is on fire. It's the worst day of your life so far. And here comes a 19-year-old volunteer firefighter with his camera up, selfieing himself on a video as he's holding on the side of $1 million truck. My other personal favorite that I've seen was DPW workers in these $500,000, $250,000 trucks driving and snow plowing and live streaming that as well. That's one of my other favorites. So we've seen a lot of things happen on social media when it comes to government workers that have been somewhat frightening. And part of the reason I think is when Dave started his work, the General Ledger was a ledger. It was a physical book. And he'll tell me stories about the Wang machine, which was this electronic typewriting device, and he talks about it as if it was this complicated technology, and I've never been aware of it. So he'll give me these history lessons about how back in the day when he would drive somewhere, if he would get lost, he'd have to pull this map out, and he'd have to spread this map out across the car, and it worked offline, and it never needed software updates, but it couldn't tell you real-time traffic, and I said, well, that's a waste. But he would go through this. He would tell these things with me, but no one ever sat him down and said, look, think about the device I'm about to hand you. I'm going to give you a computer. You're going to have to do your job with this device. But I'm not going to tell you what some of the pitfalls can be. I'm not going to tell you some of the ways this might be dangerous. I'm not going to tell you that we can bring in guys who will look at every single thing this computer has ever done. And if we catch you shopping for puppies for 15 minutes a day on a regular basis, there's a little tool that can calculate that and come up with a sum of the amount of time you've stolen from the people. No one ever sat him down and told him that. No one ever sat most government employees down and told them that. But I've gotten called in on those. I've gotten called in because someone was shopping for makeup on CVS for most of the morning, and they just didn't realize that we could watch all that. A lot of these devices that we use to do our everyday jobs that make life so much better also have pitfalls to them. Social media is a big one. So we're going to go through some things you should and should not do. The effect of technology on our world today is huge. Look at the top 10 market caps in the world right now. Apple, everyone knows what that one is, right? Alphabet, does anyone know what Alphabet is? I'll give a gold star, I really will. Google, right. So what happened with Google was Google got tired of going through all the fun regulations that the SEC and being a publicly traded company is. So they decided, all right, we're going to create this parent company called Alphabet. We're going to become its subsidiary. And then down the road, which they just recently did a couple weeks ago, we're going to convert to an LLC. And then we don't have any responsibility to shareholders. So now technically when you invest in Google, you don't. You invest in Alphabet and all their different little projects, Google just being one of them. So that was super shady. And remember, they run the internet. Microsoft, we know what they are. Facebook, the 4th largest market cap today. This is off a Bloomberg report. Facebook. Anyone in the room, now listen to the question. Anyone in the room not have a Facebook? Oh, I'm so proud of all of you. Good job. Everybody gets a gold star who raised their hand. I know I can only have given at least 2, so no one can leave yet. Then you've got Amazon, Alibaba, which is a Chinese tech company, basically Amazon. Berkshire Hathaway, anyone not know what that is? Tencent, which is basically a Chinese tech investment company which involves itself in technology. Johnson & Johnson and Exxon. What's interesting here is Apple, the people who used to sell the plastic TV monitor-sized computers, has a market cap larger than both Johnson & Johnson and Exxon combined. They're a tech company. They were started in someone's garage, allegedly. 2 guys got together, wrote some software, and now they stand up on stages like this and say, you're going to pay $800 every year for one of these, and you're going to give it to us. And they're right. By the way, on average, it's estimated that these things cost about $280 to make, and we pay about $800 for them. That's why their market cap's $785 billion. They really have something good going. Let's talk a little bit about Facebook. For those of you that don't know what Facebook is a way for you to upload photos of food you have eaten today, photos of children that are in your family or currently around you, and photos and videos of cats. That's what it is. Occasionally, you can write a post about your political or religious interests that no one will read. Then occasionally you will share a funny video that everyone will watch. That is what Facebook has become. Worldwide, there are over 1.86 billion monthly active users of Facebook. 1.86 billion people use Facebook. There are 1.15 billion mobile daily active users on Facebook. It's an insane amount of people that access this service. 1.23 billion people log on to Facebook daily, so that's their daily active users. In September of 2016, there are 1.74 billion mobile active users, that's mobile, Facebook, et cetera, On average, the like and share buttons are viewed across almost 10 million websites daily. In Europe, there's about 307 million people. Of ages 25 to 34 in America, 29% of its users is the most common demographic, and 5 new profiles are created every second. Facebook is huge. When it comes to the millennial generation, they check Facebook before they check any other source of news. So for those of you that don't know, Facebook has what's called a trending section. And what they'll do is they'll show you news articles that are relevant amongst their users. News articles that they see shared and posted a lot that they calculate are trending. So younger Americans will get up, wake up, check their phone in the morning, read Facebook, and that's their news. Now, Facebook is a marketing company. We might get confused that they're a social media company. They're not concerned about you being able to message friends from high school or grandparents getting videos of their children and their grandchildren. That's not their main goal. Their main goal is to track every single thing you do so they can resell it to resellers, or to marketers, advertisers. They make money through pushing ads. And as an advertiser, if you started a business, you can go to Facebook and say, I'd like females between the ages of 18 to 30 who live in the following zip codes in New Jersey who just so happen to work for local government, and I'd like to pay, I don't know, $1,000 to show them this ad on their news feed every day. And Facebook will say, okay, sure, and they'll do it. Because what do people give over when they have the Facebook app on their phone? They share their location, their contacts, who they message. Not right now, we'll get to you later. who they message, who they talk to, everything they say, their political interests, their religious interests, their views about humanity, their sports affiliations, the way they shop. For those of you that Facebook, how many of you have ever done one of those quizzes that says, like, what Disney princess am I? Answer 10 questions. We hear the laughs. We know this is a thing. Can I get one brave soul to tell me they've answered a quiz on Facebook? Has anyone ever done? Okay, we have one hand right back there. Good job. Great. Does anyone know what those quizzes are for? Anyone have an idea? How? So we're getting very, very good over there. They're asking you about 10 questions that have nothing to do with your associated Disney princess or Star Wars character name. What they're really trying to figure out is, how much of an impulsive buyer are you, and how likely are you to buy a future product that we're going to launch, so that when we start our advertising campaign, we're not wasting our advertising money, and we can push those ads toward the right individuals. So if you're an impulsive buyer, they'll figure this out because they've had psychologists and advanced marketers write these questions, these quote-unquote quiz questions. They'll figure this out. They'll figure out who you are. They'll get a better idea of you based on your demographic. They'll figure out, okay, this person's most likely to buy my product. And then 6 months down the road, when a new post scrolls up on your news feed that says sponsored underneath it, and it's for a product that you really feel like you want to buy, that's what the purpose of that quiz was. And these are done 1,000 times a second. These quizzes are very popular. Facebook has gotten very good at figuring out how to sell to people. Now, most of us in the room don't think we click the ads on Facebook. I've never actually met another human who said, oh, I was on Facebook the other day, I saw an ad and that made me buy a product. I've never met that. So somehow Facebook is justifying to marketers they're getting click-through sales. But it does actually exist enough that they are the 4th largest market cap in the world today. Facebook users are 76% female out of 100%, and 66% male. That stat's kind of weird. Highest traffic occurs midweek. Here we go. For those of you that have subordinates at work that are convinced that they're doing something else after lunch, Facebook's peak hours are midweek between 1 to 3 p.m. You come back from work, you know it's blocked on the Wi-Fi, so you turn your Wi-Fi off, you log into your Facebook over your data, you check your Facebook, you hit the keyboard a few times, you check your Facebook, you hit the keyboard a few times. These things happen. 50% of 18 to 24-year-olds go on Facebook when they wake up. 1 in 5 page views in the United States occurs on Facebook. So 1 out of 5 page views of the internet in the United States occurs on Facebook. They are absolutely huge. It would be difficult to ask someone if they didn't know what Facebook was. They'd look at you like they'd say, oh, I know what Facebook is. We're speaking English. They'd understand. Facebook is gigantic. Who knows what Twitter is? What is Twitter? Go ahead. Anybody, just yell it like it's freestyle. What's Twitter? Yes, who said noise? Gold star, get out of the room. Twitter is 140 characters that we just found out yesterday they're testing the limit up to 280. That's going to be coming soon. But as of currently right now, it's 140 characters of someone's opinion that's shared to the world. Now, some of you may know of a politician that regularly uses Twitter to communicate with a demographic. I didn't put the slide on the stage because I don't want security guards to have to escort me in or out of the room based on someone's political feelings. But we all know what Twitter has done to the world. There are 310 monthly active users, a total of 1.3 billion accounts. Of those, 44% are made an account and left before ever sending a tweet. I don't like the term tweet or tweeting. It's not a very masculine thing. I was angry the other day, so I tweeted. It just doesn't, it doesn't really come across as something I'd really ever want to do, so I try not to talk about myself that way. Only 550 million people have ever sent a tweet. Those are tweeters. 500 million people visit the site each month without logging in. 29.2% of US social media users are Twitter users. 80% of active users access the site via the phone. For those of you that have a website or web presence, I will tell you right now, if it is not phone friendly, you're wasting quite a bit of time. Most of the internet at this point, by the regular at-home residential individual outside of the job, not using Windows 7 and Internet Explorer 10 or Chrome or something like that. When they are at home, they check things on their phone. That's what we are seeing on retail sites, on consumer sites, on sites that face the citizenry. 60% or greater in this local area are coming through mobile devices. So the phone has definitely taken over when it comes to the consumer space. So that's a very important statistic right there. 208 is the average number of followers. 391 million accounts have no followers at all. This is a very dated statistic, but I'll throw it out there anyway. Katy Perry has the most followers with over 78 million people who follow her lattes and her workout routine and a bunch of other stuff like that. Journalists make up 24.6% of verified accounts. So Twitter will do this thing that'll say, yes, this is actually you. That's a little verification badge. 83% of the world's leaders are on Twitter, and that's 83% of the people we wish weren't there. 79% of accounts are held outside of the US, and Twitter estimates that 23 million of its active users are actually bots or robots programmed by computers to just send fake tweets. If it were up to me, if I was in a legislative body, no elected official would be allowed to use a Twitter because it gets us into a whole world of fury. We've had instances where we're doing a couple classes coming up in the fall, and the questions come up and they'll say things like, well, if an elected official discusses a public matter over social media, is it a public record? And if so, how long do we have to retain it? Does anyone know the answer? I'm serious. I've got a class coming up in like a week, and I'd love a reference and say, that guy said. No, but that's the issue that we're facing now. So you'll see these public officials discussing public matter, and we all know, thanks to this wonderful thing called Oprah, anything sent in any form, digitally, electronically, however, discussing government business on government time is considered a government record. And here we are having elected officials creating tons of them that we can't really archive that easily all over Twitter constantly. Instagram. Would someone like to tell me what Instagram is? You upload photos, and then someone will click that photo and they will like it, and a little heart will show up. Is there anything more to Instagram? There's maybe videos now, but yeah, you can send messages back and forth on it, but genuinely, it started as a let's share pictures service. Instagram has over 500 million active monthly users, over 40 billion photos have been shared. That's an old statistic now. Instagram clocks up 3.5 billion likes every day. And on an average, 80 million photos are shared. On an average day, 80 million photos are shared. Instagram usage has doubled in the last 2 years. At the time, Selena Gomez had the most amount of followers, with 69.5 million. And over 60% of users log into the site daily, making it the second most engaged network after Facebook. So of that 500 million active monthly users, 60% log in daily. Does anyone know who bought Instagram? Facebook. Off of two guys. Does anyone know for how much money? A combined value of stock and cash of $1 billion. You ever have an idea that was so stupid simple, like, hey, what if we just created an app where all you did was share pictures back and forth and your friends liked it? And you thought to yourself, yeah, but that'll never make money. And then it's worth $1 billion. Instagram is huge. It is gigantic. And it is very similar to another service we've got coming up. Can someone tell me what Reddit is? I'd like to be interactive. Anyone know what Reddit is? Message board. Who said message board? Gold star, get out. It's absolutely a message board. It is one of the darker spots of the internet, I will say. The way Reddit works is that you'll create a post and then people will either like it and upvote it or not like it and downvote it. And some of the worst content that's shared by humanity is posted on Reddit. So if you're at the workplace and this is open, I would probably talk to your firewall people and have it blocked. Can someone tell me what Snapchat is? This one should be pretty popular. Who wants to describe Snapchat? I mean, I'm already getting paid to be here, so it doesn't really matter. I can talk all day. Someone else, go ahead, jump in. What's Snapchat? Raise a hand for that, please. Raise a hand. Who said that? Raise a hand. Gold star. You may leave, ma'am. Very good. You take pictures of yourself, you apply a filter, you instantly lose either 100 pounds or 10 years or whatever you want. You can add a puppy face or a clown filter. Your eyes can get really big. You can spit out rainbows. And you send these pictures back and forth. Does anyone know how Snapchat got started? Anyone want to tell me? What's one of those features about those pictures? Do they stay permanently or do they disappear? They disappear. Snapchat was popular with teens a couple years ago. Now, would anyone venture to take a guess why teens who have just hit puberty and just figured out what their phones are would love a photo messaging app that instantly disappears after 10 seconds and supposedly they're never seen again? We're all adults, I'll let you think about that. That is genuinely where this app got its roots. In fact, several thousand photos were leaked in a Snapchat hack, and a bunch of underage people got photos they would not want shared, scattered all across the darker parts of the internet, because these children actually believed, oh, when I take this picture, it'll disappear after 10 seconds, and no one will keep a copy, and it won't live on a server somewhere, and there's no way this could ever get back to bite me. And that's, I guess, what you do in your teenage years. You make horrible mistakes that'll follow you for the rest of your life. That's unfortunately what happened. Snapchat is the new mobile rising platform. Unfortunately, as much as I'd like to say that reading and communicating and speaking face-to-face and engaging in rational thought is what's leading the new millennial generation and Generation Z to follow, unfortunately, what I actually have to tell you is quick videos under 10 seconds and pictures are how the young generation is communicating now. This is the new booming service. Instagram is becoming a booming service. Photos and video-based services are what are taking fire right now, and we forecast that they will eventually take over social media in the very near future. What is it doing to us? I want to talk you through something called Facebook depression. I'm going to read a little off the screen here. Researchers have proposed a new phenomenon called Facebook depression, defined as depression that develops when preteens and teens spend a great deal of time on social media sites such as Facebook, and then they begin to exhibit classic symptoms of depression. I want to talk a little bit about this. As I was mentioned in my introduction, I work with a group of psychologists. They're very lovely people, except when a confrontation happens, because they're not confrontational, so they don't know how to handle it. It's kind of fun. Stepping aside that, they are very lovely people, and one of the things that we get to talk about regularly is what the effect of social media is doing to our young people. Imagine this. You're 14 years old. You've just entered high school. We all can remember what this was like. Your social circles are going to be defined this year. Some of the decisions you make in your first year of high school will determine a lot that will follow you for the next couple of years. So you get on Facebook, and one of the first things you do is you start adding everybody. Oh, be my friend, be my friend, be my friend. You start sending out friend requests. Great. Now you've got this group of people on Facebook that follow you, and you follow them, and you're able to see things about each other. So you upload a photo of yourself, and it gets 3 likes, and you've never really had anyone at this school say they liked anything about you, and suddenly you've got 3 likes on a post you made, so you're happy. So you decide, all right, I'm going to buy Starbucks with my parents' money, and I'm going to buy one of these $5 2-ounce drinks, and I'm going to take a picture of myself with one of these $5 2-ounce drinks, and then I'm going to post it on Facebook. And suddenly you get 10 likes. What happens during this like effect? Does anyone know what the chemical dopamine is? Psychologists and researchers have been able to prove that likes and positive affirmation through social media releases dopamine. And what happens with the dopamine release effect? After a while, you constantly need what? More, right, very good. You've all been to your sexual harassment or alcohol addiction seminars. You all know how this works. I'm going to stand up here and say it's a toilet bowl cycle, and I'm going to give you ways to get out of it. But unfortunately, what happens with this is when they're 14, they start taking more and more risque or more and more outlandish photos, and eventually they plateau. So eventually they only get so popular, because not everybody can be the most popular person. So eventually, there's only a certain amount of likes they can get on a post. There's only a amount of certain times people will share it. There's only a certain amount of attention that they will get. And that plateau gets reached, and then suddenly the dopamine return starts to slide its way back down. And you've got 14-year-olds who don't really know how to look each other in the eye, don't know how to communicate that well, because it's socially acceptable now. Remember that. It is socially acceptable to stare at your phone in conversation with someone. I hate it. I can't stand it. But in the younger generation, they all look like this when they talk to each other. So you've got these people that are living off their devices, that are slowly sliding into this trail of, well, no one else is liking my post. I'm not getting as many shares as I used to. I'm not getting as drawn into this community as I thought I would. And they start exhibiting signs of depression. Acceptance by and contact with peers is an important element of adolescent life. The intensity of the online world is thought to be a factor that may trigger depression in some adolescents. As with offline depression, pre-adolescents and adolescents who suffer from Facebook depression are at risk for social isolation and sometimes turn to risky internet sites and blogs for help. Reddit's one of those that may promote substance abuse, unsafe sexual practices, or aggressive or self-destructive behaviors. This is from the American Academy of Pediatrics. I've got a link there. The PDF will be made and the PowerPoint will be made available later. That's scary. That's genuinely scary. You haven't even fully figured out who you are as a person yet. You're still trying to go into your social circles, and bam, a giant corporation, the fourth largest in the world, comes in and tells you what the news is, who your friends are, and how to relate to people. Is anyone a little bothered by that idea? You might be. Let's keep going a little bit further into your life on social media. Where does all that data live? When you send a photo to Facebook, when you upload something to your phone, where does it all go? What is the cloud? Does anyone have an idea what the cloud is? Yes, it's someone else's servers. They look like this. There's a ton of them. But the point I'm trying to make is when you upload something, it does not go to some mystical, magical cloud. A company with IT people and server engineers now own all of that information. Every message you've sent, every post you've liked, every picture you've uploaded, every photo, every little piece of data they can get off of you is legally now their property. 100% theirs, to be resold, to be marketed, to be reused, to do whatever they want with, because you voluntarily gave it over to them. How accessible are you? I'll tell you a true story. I was giving a social media class in Rhode Island. I was up with I don't even remember the name of the group. It was a smaller group, and we were doing this class, and I was talking about the dangers of social media, and I was on this slide, and I was giving the pitch that you should really talk to one of your friends and ask them to try to look you up on social media without logging in. So just try to find you cold, so all they had was your name. A lady found my wife. A lady found when we got married. A lady found my wedding photos, and she did this all just because she knew my name. So she was sitting right there in the class and began to tell me things that she and I have done. She said, "Oh, you went to Disney, didn't you?" And she started showing me pictures of it. So I'm not really an authority anymore to ask to say that I can be safe, because it was very hard to find me, ironically enough, but she did manage to find my wife and get through to me. As a true homework experiment, I'd really like you to try this. See how accessible information is about you on social media just as a member of the public. So get one of your friends to try to find you without signing into their accounts, without going through to their Facebook. You can even do this yourself. Just don't log into Facebook or use someone else's account. See how accessible you are. Some people are rather surprised with how much information they leave publicly available. There used to be a website called pleaserobme.com that used publicly available information. Is anyone in the room familiar with pleaserobme.com? Does anyone know what this was? Okay, we're going to get to that in an upcoming slide. It's one of my favorite websites that ever existed. Who has the right to watch what you do on social media? Like all the things that you think are private. Who has the right to watch? Let's say you're at work. Does the employer have the right to watch all of your Facebook activity? Yes? Absolutely, obviously. Township time, township computer, township internet. Do they have a right to stick a server in the back room that'll decrypt all that SSL traffic and try and break through all the encryption to figure out exactly what you messaged your mother over Facebook? Absolutely they do. Not illegal at all. In fact, there's plenty of precedent to support that. Who else could be watching? I'd like you to do another fun experiment. How many of you can tell me, as a matter of a fact, that you talk in real life to every person in your Facebook, on your friends list? Take a look, take an inventory of the people you are friends with, you are connected with on these social media platforms. Really ask yourselves, do I know them? Do I know who they are? Do I actually talk to this person? Because they might not be who you think they are, and we're going to get to that in an upcoming slide. Who's watching? During the Ashley Madison hack, 10,000 government officials' email addresses were leaked when the Ashley Madison list got published. Who in the room knows what Ashley Madison is? Some very brave people raised their hands when I asked that question. I love asking that question. Ashley Madison was an affairs website. So if you're married and you wanted to have an affair, you'd go to Ashley Madison and you'd sign up. 10,000 people said, you know what, that sounds like a really great idea. Oh, I've got to sign up with an email. Why don't I just use my government/township email address to log in to Ashley Madison? So another piece of advice, if you're going to sign up for an affairs website, get a free Gmail account or a free Yahoo account that's in no way associated to you. This one was a little embarrassing. I have to talk about it every class, though. It's hysterical. Are you entitled to privacy on social media? No. Again, everything you upload, everything you share is legally the property of that company. They can use it for marketing purposes to resell it. They can take your photo of you on vacation and slap it on the front of one of their billboards. They can do whatever they want. It's officially theirs. Privacy is more of an illusion when it comes to social media. So be careful what you're sharing and sending over social media. Geolocation. You say, all right, I'm going to check in at the GFOA conference in New Jersey. Or let's say this, I'm going to check in at Disney World down in Florida. I'm assuming most of us live in New Jersey. What are you telling me? Okay, for a week, you're not going to be at your house. And it's going to take at least one airplane or one 19-hour straight drive, which I did this summer with my wife in the car, because if anyone's going to, I hate going through airports. If anyone's going to harass me and abuse me and go through my things and check my stuff, it's going to be my wife in my car, not some TSA agent. I don't fly anymore. I don't do that. Either way, geolocation is the process of giving away information about yourselves. Where you are, where you're checking in. Don't do this. It's not a necessary thing. If someone needs to know where you are right away, there's this new app on the phone. I'll show it to you. It looks like an old school telephone. Right? And here we go. It's like this. And if you know someone else's numbers, like their associated phone number, you can call them and talk to them in real life. Most of my friends have never used this app before. I don't know if they even have it on their phone. I tell them, you can just call me. But no, why didn't you check WhatsApp or Instagram or Facebook or like one of the other 50 ways I could message you? I never check in places. Because I'm telling you where I am at the time, which is also telling you where I'm not. I'm giving away patterns about where I go. That's not something I want potentially the world to have access to. Finally, profiling. I'll give a short story about this because I know I'm close to the clock here. You're a government official. Information about you, no matter what, you may think you're not important. You may really think I'm the lowest totem pole on the chain. But guess what you've all got in this room? You've got a government email address. At the end of the day, I can move people pretty quick with a government email address. If I've got access to your government email address, it doesn't matter if you're a tax collector, if you're a CFO, nobody needs to know. If I've just got a valid email address that's associated with an actual municipality that I, as an attacker, can compromise, I can prey on your citizenry very effectively because that government email address is valid and it carries weight. So you may think, oh, I'm an assistant to an assistant to an assistant to a director. I'm not worth anything. Yeah, but that little bit on the end of your email address is. And if I can figure out your password and how to get into your email account, I can cause damage. Because now when I launch my phishing attack or ransomware attack, people are going to believe the links I'm sending them are real because it's got that beautiful government email address. So your security is actually rather important. And I want to talk to you about profiling. Profiling is the process of using publicly available information about you on Facebook, Twitter, social media, to scan as much information as they can about you, create a profile, and try to do several things. Have any of you ever seen security questions, like on a bank website or something? They'll say, what city were you born? Or have any of you seen security questions, what was the name of your first pet? Or what's your mother's maiden name? Sarah Palin, during her election, had a Yahoo account with security questions like that. Someone just looked up the answers and reset her password and got into her account. They can do the same thing with you. If you've got information about you that's attached to security questions and I can find it out, I can reset your passwords on your bank account or whatever account. So here's a little tip. If you ever set up security questions for an account, lie. Lie and write those lies down in that little black book you all keep in your pen drawer at the desk that you shouldn't keep there, or taped under the keyboard that you all keep that you shouldn't keep there, or given to your neighbor, which you should never give to your neighbor. Stop giving them to your neighbor for when you forget. always lie. Another thing about profiling, a very easy way to get this information. You tell me, oh, all my stuff's private on my Facebook. No one's got access to my stuff. No one's going to be able to get in unless they're my friend. Unless they're my friend. Here's what you do. You create a fairly attractive opposite-gendered individual that's similar age from a neighboring township within maybe 50 miles of that person. You put a picture up that's fairly attractive. You then send friend requests to 5 of their friends 6 months ago. You get them to accept you. And then when you finally send the actual friend request to your target, you'll see what? 5 known contacts, 5 mutual friends. Then when they add you, all that magic security comes down. And this is done on a fairly regular basis to get through your account. Now, the last thing I will tell you, how much time do I have, sir? 5 minutes. All right. I'm going to tell you a true story from last week. And this will be the end, and then you can go do whatever you want. I was at a conference. I was giving a seminar, and there's 2 things that just happened to me this week. I just became an uncle for the first time. My sister had a baby. Don't clap. It's just, my sister had a baby, and they're all getting used to that. And it's been wonderful and lovely, but my wife and I had a cat named Snuggles. And I say had a cat. We just got married. We went to the vet, and it was going to cost $3,000 to keep Snuggles with us. And, we don't have that. I'd like to tell you I'm loaded, but I'm not. We don't have that kind of money. So I was in the audience, and I said, and you can go ahead, how many of you are cat people? Do I have any fellow cat people with me? Okay, we have 1 cat person there. And it was one of those things where I hated the cat, kind of. I loved the cat a little bit. My wife loved the cat. It was really her cat. My wife was the type of person. What's the name of, you have a cat, ma'am? What's the name of your cat? Yeah. Oh. That's enough. Okay, that's enough. My wife has this tendency where she obsesses about the cat. Our cat's name was Snuggles, and for a while her computer password was Snuggles. Have you ever done that? You name one of your computer passwords, and that's what we call social engineering. So I've never had a cat. I'm allergic to cats. I've never owned a cat in my life. I told that story last week. I got 3 people to tell me the names of their cats, and then I got 3 people to agree that they all used cat names as passwords on computer systems. I'm allergic to cats. I've never owned a cat. But that's all it takes. You send a friend request, and you start looking at people's associated likes and interests. They're a Democrat. Start saying Hillary should have never had her emails exposed. They're Republican. Start saying we need more Hillary emails. Just say whatever that political group wants to hear, and you bond a friendship. Now, I apologize, ma'am, for what I did, because that was probably the scummiest trick I usually do during a seminar. Please, I apologize. I had Laura Flagg from who's UCC won't talk to me because I did that in one of her classes, and several of the ladies got so mad that I pulled that trick that they just they wanted to leave the room. It was awful. But genuinely, anything you can use to find that bonding interest with that individual, that you can use Facebook for to reach out to someone and find that common interest. Dead cat usually works. Dead cat works right away. I've walked into several offices, I've pulled the dead cat, and people will both not only give me their cat's names, but they will admit that they use cat names for passwords. Sometimes it's just that simple. So if they can find information out about you that's personally identifiable, that they can use to manipulate you, they will. So just be careful. Think about these ramifications when it comes to using these social media platforms. Think about, okay, what am I sharing? How much information am I giving out? Am I revealing the fact that I'm a government employee because it says I work for so-and-so township? And did I just post something at 2:30 that clearly says I'm not working, I'm on Facebook? Think about what you're sharing. Is my favorite beer this particular brand? Is that also my password? In every picture, do I have a picture of that favorite beer? Little things like that start to build up. I'm not saying don't use Facebook. I'm not saying don't use technology. I'm not saying don't use any of these products and services. They're all wonderful. They're all great. I enjoy them. I use them. All I'm saying is they don't have to run our lives. They don't have to be the first thing you check in the morning. You don't have to constantly update them. It's not your job. You don't work for them. They technically work for you. So just be mindful. What am I sharing? What information am I giving away? How can that be used to come against me? And is there too much? Should I stop? And I'll give you one last challenge. You might know there's a problem if you can't complete this challenge. For 30 days, don't use any social media product. If you had no sweat, if it didn't bother you, Keep using social media. If after 30 days you've had so much anxiety you've turned to drinking or coffee, maybe consider that social media runs too much of your life. And with that, that's all I have for you. Thank you very much for your time.